Two, three, four.
The Beatles or the Rolling Stones, Star Wars or Star Trek, the Yankees or the Mets. True fans would say you really should choose one or the other, and it might be the case with two of Detroit's largest automakers, Ford and GM. Ford's stock has been on a tear as the company's profits have surged, sales have been great, but some people are starting to think that GM is really on a nice little comeback. The company is going to be going public later in November. It's out of bankruptcy. It's also profitable again. So what do you think about Detroit's top two automakers? Fiso Takirambud, and I apologize if I'm just massacred your name, is focusing, so to speak, on Ford. He writes that Ford led the way for the U.S. auto industry as it proved there's still a pulse in Detroit. Ford should continue to be a performer as U.S. auto sales look to rebound along with the economy as a whole. I agree with that 100%. Ford is really just clicking right now on all cylinders. The stock reflects that, and it's very admirable that they didn't have to go into bankruptcy or get a bailout to actually do as well as they're doing. Sheth Jones disputes the notion that GM is that far behind Ford, though. GM and Ford have strong lineups right now. To say Ford has a much better lineup is utterly ridiculous. Ford, I think a lot of people that I spoke to still think that they do have the better lineup of small cars and even some of the fuel-efficient or more fuel-efficient trucks and SUVs. But that said, GM does seem to have a better lineup pipeline as well. Obviously, the Cruze, Volt are two cars that are getting a lot of attention, so it's not as if GM is making cars that no one wants. Ted Peters thinks that both companies, however, still aren't as good as one of Japan's top automakers. No, he's not referring to Toyota. If either Ford or GM were ever somehow freed from the bondage of their union debts, they might someday build cars as well as Honda. Very interesting point there. I would strongly suspect that employees of Ford and GM disagree with that standpoint. It's possible that that has held back those companies compared to some of their foreign rivals. That's not to say that we shouldn't have unions for Ford, GM, and Chrysler for that matter. Finally, John DeRemo thinks that the bailout of GM was absolutely necessary given the situation with the economy. Keeping GM alive has been and will continue to be a win-win situation. That's a perfect way to wrap up. I know there were a lot of people back when GM was getting the federal bailout and going into bankruptcy that thought, hey, just let them go under. That really, I don't think, was ever something that should have been seriously considered. GM is still a hallmark, a benchmark, a classic U.S. blue chip. Letting it just die because of the 2008 credit crisis really would have been catastrophic, not probably just for Detroit, but the U.S. economy as a whole.